Hi, I'm Trisha Peach, host of the Kidmin Ninja. I'm excited for new things to come out in kids ministry. The market is not saturated. We need more resources. And this one I really appreciate. This one has been exciting to me. And I asked Michael Chanley, who some of you already know. You know him because he's a best-selling author and you've been to some of the conferences he has put on. He has a brand new book out. And I had seen where the workbook had gone live, and now the book has gone live. Very exciting. So I asked him if he would be willing to talk a bit about his book and his inspiration for the book, and maybe some of the struggles he had getting this book to publication, which, as an author, my experience has been sometimes writing the book was just one of the challenges, and then there were many challenges after that.
Yeah.
So I am excited today that he very graciously said yes. And I know we have children's pastors that watch this, and family pastors, and youth pastors, and senior pastors, um, and some that are just they're ministry volunteers that are doing the work of one of these ministry leaders, just not getting paid. So all of you, welcome this week. So I want us to get to know Michael Chanley. If you haven't met him before, you're in for a treat. And I was wondering, Michael, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. I know just some. I know of your background serving our country in the military. I know that
Yeah.
you are you've been a long time advocate for ministry, family ministry, children's ministry, and a best-selling author. So this is not your first book. There have been several here. So
Yeah.
could you tell our viewers just a little bit about yourself and what you're about?
Yeah. Yeah. Happy to. So I'm Michael. My website's Michael J. Chanley, so I use my initial because there's other Michael Chanleys out there. But yeah, I've been in ministry for, I was thinking earlier today, about 28 years. I got
Oh,
saved when I was in the Marine Corps. I kind of grew up feral, kind of grew up pagan. Honestly, I didn't really have a faith upbringing, and so I came to my faith as an adult around the time my son was born, and now my son is married and we have our first grandson. So
yay.
it's been really exciting. My wife and I just celebrated 30 years of marriage. I've served in family and children's ministry the whole time I've been in ministry. It was either with nonprofit work outside of the church, and then volunteering in the church, or at different churches. And now I serve as lead pastor of a local church. I say lead pastor. My actual title is just pastor. But anyways, I think a lot of people appreciate that because not every church has like multiple tons of staff, and this is the first church I've worked at that doesn't have a large staff. Um,
Yeah,
it was a church that was struggling, and now we're doing good. We're doing family and children's ministry here, and
that's
things are
awesome.
growing in all the right ways.
That's awesome. I had read a study recently that the churches, a lot of the churches are in decline, unfortunately. And
Yeah,
the small amount that are growing in the US are putting a lot of emphasis on family ministry.
yeah,
And that even coming from the lead pastor, the pastor, realizing that we got to put the investment in time and of our really great volunteers into kids ministry, which of course I was saying, of course, that makes sense
yeah,
to me. So
yeah.
I read, I started reading your book, so I know that you were working on this as part of seminary, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful. I went back to seminary and it was profoundly impactful for my life. So I do recommend it for any
Yeah,
pastor, any ministry leader. So what inspired you to write this about love, a whole book
yeah,
about love?
yeah. The book I published on the study of Jonah was the one that I worked on from seminary, and then after that, I just kept writing. I manuscript all of my sermons, and so what I do is I tend to manuscript my sermons, and then I come back to them and I edit them to make them work in written form, at least the ones that I really like. And when I was doing a series on the book of John, this has been actually almost 3 years ago now. Um, I just I just felt that it resonated with people. You know, people struggle with anxiety and worry, and so often, you know, at least since I've been a Christian, people will say, "Well, if you're going to read the Bible, start with the book of John, and here's why." And so as I was teaching it and was just doing this deep dive, very similar to what I learned to do in seminary, into the scriptures, I found that there was this through line of the message of love. And I found that as I studied it, I'm not an incredibly anxious person, but I do struggle with a little bit of depression, and I struggle with anxiety and worry sometimes. I think like anyone who has things in their life they care about, and and so as I began to study it, I just had such a profound experience. It was like coming to my faith again. And so I set about trying to put it into a book and into a journal to help people experience and practice the same kind of things. And it turned into this is the book, God Called Love. So
Yay.
yeah, so it's
Yay.
been it says the subtitles experiencing love in an anxious world needing grace. Um,
Wow.
and so throughout the book I talk about the theme of love that shows up in John's gospel and some of the things that stood out to me. And it's really meant to be a like, you know, a companion. It's not really a commentary as much as it is kind of a memoir of someone journeying through trying to follow Jesus, trying
Yes.
to understand what John means. Well, in 1 John 4, it says God is love. Well, what does it mean that God is love? And man, what a powerful message in a world that like the Christian message is so muddled down in drama and tension and division and judgmentalism, but yet we read that God is love.
Hmm.
Jesus came to save the world, not to condemn
Condemn
it.
it.
It's so good. And yeah, so that was the, I don't know if it answers your question, but that was the root behind this deep study. Yeah.
That definitely answers the question. I thought, what could be more amazing to spend time with, to sit with, to reflect on than the nature of love and of God? I mean, that just so profound. I also thought, from what I've been reading in your book, was how positive and uplifting it is.
Oh, thank you.
And a lot of what we see in the news is so depressing. A lot of what I read, I read a lot of articles. It's so down, and this is not not to me, unless I haven't gotten to that part yet. But
I, I don't know if you'd find that.
no, it's been very encouraging and uplifting, and like, wow, this is the God that loves me. This is the God I fell in love with. Oh, I remember, you know, learning this about God, but we need to think about this and go back to that.
Yeah.
Um, I wondered, because I saw a workbook that went with this. So
Yep.
there's the book, but there's
Yep.
also the workbook.
Yeah, it's called Experiencing God Called Love, and it's actually a 35-day Bible study. And
Wow.
so when I was in seminary, my work was focused on spiritual formation. And it was really really helpful because I was in a season of ministry where I was honestly I was struggling,
Hmm.
and I started seminary in 2019,
Oh,
and
wow.
then everything fell apart in 2020. And so I had, just a period of time where I had people like, what is happening? They had this tremendous amount of worry and angst. Well, in that time, I was studying the spiritual. Foster calls it spiritual disciplines.
Hmm.
I like to use the word practices because practices implies we're getting better, and it doesn't sound as harsh. From being a Marine, I think I hear discipline, and I think, you're gonna get hammered, you're gonna get in trouble, or you got to do something that you don't want to do. And there is a part of that, but really practices implies it's okay to try out fasting and fail at it. It's okay if you pray and you get distracted. It's okay. Like you're journeying and you're growing. And the
Yeah.
idea of the journal is to introduce the spiritual practices. The first part of the book is a spiritual practices guidebook that
Yeah.
summarizes 12 different spiritual practices. And then the second half is 35 days of just simple verses that teach a simple acronym to learn to study the Bible and to practice daily prayer with a weekly call to test out fasting and test out journaling and track your progress through the Bible when you're reading. It's just some simple tools, and we've been going through it as a church. We handed them out at our church earlier this month, and I've been preaching again through the book of John, um, mainly because uh, in September we're going to start a series going through the book of Revelation, and so I didn't want to go into a book that feels so heavy about condemnation. It really isn't. It's about victory. But
Yes,
anyways,
I know what
but I didn't want to do that without first revisiting this message of love. And so,
yes.
yeah, so the Experiencing God Called Love journal, it's available on Amazon or my website.
Wonderful.
But it's available now. Yeah, it's out there. So
I saw that and thought, how awesome is that? Mainly because you're not just showing people, okay, you can believe this, but there's an action step.
yeah,
There's action. You're challenging them to do. So
right.
they're listening and then they do, which cements it. Do you think a family or maybe a ministry team could do this Bible study together?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, so again, my background is in family and children's ministry, and a
Awesome.
lot of the things that I think I've found to be really helpful for my church and my role now are things that I found that were helpful in teaching third, fourth, and fifth graders how to practice their faith. So often the church says, well, pray or try this or do this, but they don't really, most churches, I think, in my experience, don't take time to help people develop a rhythm of that grace, a rhythm of what that looks like. And it's not to be legalistic, it's just to test it out and to see how you're designed and see if you can't grow in the way of Jesus in a way that really helps you experience him in a new way. And yeah, so absolutely. In fact, I've got a few friends that have reached out to me about having me come and
Mm.
do some trainings with them and with their team, and I love doing that kind of stuff. And so I'm available a limited amount of time to do some things like that in my role, and happy to do it. I also post videos on my Facebook page and to try and help people, kind of like what you're doing with your podcast. Video,
Yeah.
this is video and
Hmm.
podcast, right? Yeah, so
Oh,
I
yeah.
do similar to try and help people, and um, yeah, so
Yeah, that was going to be
yes,
my next question. Is it okay if they reach out to you and ask for help with the training? And then, we know you're busy, you're pastoring a church, you've got other trainings coming up, but you could see if you had some availability.
absolutely, yeah, would love to do that. You think about the type of people that are called to serve in children's ministry, and
Hmm.
you've probably heard me talk about this before because when we were
Yes.
doing conferences, this was a big driving factor about it. It's like they're really just the best people on the planet. I mean, they believe in Jesus enough to take time and humble themselves and take a knee and teach a child about Jesus Christ. I mean, there is literally, I think, no worldly honor given to people to do that. But it is essential. It's commanded, but it's essential, but it's also such a beautiful picture of what
Yes.
Jesus does for us. He comes to us in humility and
Mhm.
teaches us. He just says, wherever you're at, come follow me. Wherever you're at, regardless of your past mistakes, come and follow me. Come and be changed. Come and learn what it means to live without the burden of a culture that just wants to tear you down and label you and brand you a certain way. Like, free yourself of that. Be connected to me alone. And like, I mean, I think that message is so good for, obviously, for children, but for adults, and for adults who are working with children to be able to learn that and practice it so they can instill it in kids. I mean, that's Deuteronomy 6 right there. I mean, that's what we're doing. So
I love it.
yeah.
That's so beautiful. That is
Oh,
so
thank you. Yeah.
beautiful. And as I was reading through, I
Oh,
thought,
Jesus.
okay, yeah, a lot of this it would make sense to our kids. This is what we want them to know. We
Yeah.
want them to know a God called love,
Yeah.
not a God called pummel. And
That's right. Yeah, that's great.
that's hard because yeah, some of
Yeah,
us you grow up in a strict tradition and it can be hard. You forget that we serve a God called love.
that's right. Yeah.
So
And I
amazing.
I really worried about calling the book God Called Love because it almost feels like putting God in a box. But John writes, God is love.
Yes.
And so that was really what kind of led me to think about. I was like, well, why is this theme of love overlooked? Why is it that we live in a culture that is more obsessed with telling people what not to do than what you could do? Like, don't be
Yes.
this, don't be that, or claim this label upon yourself or this way of being, or our culture tries to define love in so many different ways.
Yeah.
But when we read the Bible through the lens that God is love, as we read in First John, it changes everything. You realize that the message of Jesus is that he loves us. I mean,
Yeah.
it brings it back down to that. And so it's not shame on you because you mess it up. It's he loves you, he forgives you. Turn away from your mistakes,
Yeah.
pick yourself up and do better and help someone else do better. I mean, it's
Yeah.
simple things like that. And that gives me hope. It gives me
Yeah.
joy, and I think it gives people a sense of peace, whether they come
Yes.
from a past um, with addiction or
Yeah.
whatever struggles. It gives people peace.
I 100% agree. And I love that for all of our readers, because we have several people that watch that they're readers. They love to read. They have a goal to read, you know, 15, 20 books every,
Wow.
and I applaud you guys. And this one needs to be on your list because they
Well,
love ministry books and not just how-to books, but um, where they get closer to Jesus. This is one of those you need to go get. So, last but not least, I wondered if you had encountered any challenges while you were writing or getting your book out.
right.
I know I was so naive with my first book. I thought the hard part was just getting it written. So if I could just get it
Yeah.
written, I'm done. And no, see, he's laughing. He knows that that was this one challenge, one part, and then it went from there. So I wondered what challenges you may have faced in writing and
Yeah.
to getting this to the finish line. I've
Right.
likened it before as like you work so hard and you have this baby, and then you show your baby to the world, and you don't want the world to say, "What an ugly baby." You know?
That's a
So,
great analogy. There's a real fear, right, that people will
yes,
reject it or tear it down. And
yes.
when I wrote my last book, Hope and Honeybees, so I keep bees at my farm, and so I did.
Awesome.
So it's based on an analogy of beekeeping, and then the message of hope. I really labored so much over it, and then whenever I actually got it out there, my life just got super busy, and so I didn't take into account how much effort it takes to try and communicate to people, hey, I have this book, hey, this is going on, and so that can be disheartening,
Yes.
and that reminded me, of knowing why I do what I do. When I write books, it's more of a hobby. I'm a past, well, I'm a dad first, and a husband. So in our family, we say God, family, church, work as our
Hmm.
priorities, and so
That's good.
hobbies fall beyond all of that. And
Yeah.
writing for me is a hobby. But at
Yeah.
night, whenever when I could be watching Netflix or doom scrolling on TikTok, I will sometimes work on writing and sometimes work on my books, and that's how this came about. So yeah, so it is the discipline of getting it written, and then it's all the editing and all the intentionality and
Yes.
figuring out how to get it out to people, and then you can do all that work, and at the end of the day, one person could buy it or a
Yep.
dozen people, and if you're okay with that, that's great. I'm actually okay with that. For me, like, actually the dedication I wrote in the front of this book was to my grandson, because
Oh,
I know at this stage of my life that, I guess at any stage of your life, but it feels more present that I don't have tomorrow promised,
right.
and so I would really love for my grandkids to one day um, be able to read about my faith journey and to
Yeah.
learn from me, even if I'm gone. And so that's really my why. Would I be thrilled to death if a million people bought my book? Absolutely. but that's but that doesn't keep me from writing my next book, because that doesn't happen. And yeah.
I think that's beautiful because, you know, I've been thinking a lot about that. You said it in the book about John, that Jesus said to testify, and he decided to put his testimony in writing.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that things that are written seem to last long beyond when we're gone, because we don't
Yeah.
last very long on earth, and
No.
we don't.
No.
And then I had worked so hard in seminary on doing all this stuff, and then I thought, well, it could sit here on my computer, or maybe I can put it out and it could reach somebody and
Yeah.
encourage somebody and touch somebody. And I kind of felt the same, like, I don't care. I just want it to be out there and be a resource because then at least it's
Yeah.
doing something.
Yeah. Because God is pouring that talent, literally talent, pouring all of that energy and passion into you. And then, what a shame if you just
Yep.
sit upon it and never share it. And, so
Mm,
one of the things that I like to do is I like to help people who are interested in writing to find their voice and to figure out, it doesn't have to
yeah.
be perfect. My books are never perfect. I find mistakes in them all the time. And I'm okay with that. Like I'm not surrounded by, um, a huge team. I'm not, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a famous author. I'm not, uh, I don't know, Joyce Myers or anyone like that who
Yeah.
has this massive team, and that's okay. I'm doing the best I can, and I'm being a good steward of what God's given me.
Yes. It's
And
more.
so long as He continues to allow me to do that, I will continue to do it. I love writing, and I love sitting with words and thinking about ways to creatively help people experience or learn about God's love, or whatever truth it is that God has laid on my heart at the time. In my escape book, I went through a lot of church hurt from working in different mega churches that were just not really
Yeah.
healthy environments. And in my escape book, I took that study from Jonah that I did in seminary and I applied it to
Mm,
how do we avoid these traps that Jonah falls into?
yeah.
How do we escape the traps of Christianity? How do we um,
Yeah.
not fall into judgmentalism, not fall into being literally the worst kind of person on the planet who's a living hypocrite? And
Yeah.
that was all out of that journey. So
Yeah. Now I want to read that one because I wrote my dissertation on the real reasons why leaders quit. And I was talking about why
oh
pastors quit, why ministry leaders leave and never ever come back. And that, of
wow,
course, the number one was church conflict, being in
yeah,
terribly unhealthy situations. And it's just sad.
yeah,
It's sad. And then what got me one day was um, our the lead pastor where I was at. This was a long while back. He said, he was reading something and he said, you will become like the person you serve under eventually. When you
wow,
serve under them a long enough time, you will become like them.
hmm.
And I decided it's time I need to switch places because I
Wow,
thought, oh, and then I heard another statistic that most very unhealthy environments are a product of people that were in a horribly unhealthy environment.
yeah,
And like you said, I didn't want to spread it.
no, yeah, good for you. and
Gosh, yeah.
and so many of us go through that. And I think the last 5 years have been uh, groundbreaking or earth shattering for people who grew up in the church, because they had been told for their whole life, just trust Jesus, just pray, just everything's going to go all right. And then the whole world feels like it fell apart and
Yeah.
has really come under a new type of attack. And so many people have fallen away from their faith because they found that the I don't want to say it's a false gospel, but the fullness of the gospel wasn't taught, and they
Right.
didn't they didn't understand why they were not doing well. And like the
Right.
fullness of the gospel, when we reconstruct that,
Yeah.
we find hope and we find joy, and we find Jesus. And when we
Yes.
begin to follow him, like it just changes everything. But yeah, the world just sets trap after trap after us. And uh, the idea that you become like the person you follow, as your previous pastor said, there is truth in that. Um, but it's good and bad, isn't it? I mean, it really is.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
follow Jesus,
Yes.
Paul is a good example that he says, "Follow me as I
I
follow
follow
Jesus."
Christ.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So look to Christ, and I think when a leader in their maybe narcissistic tendency or arrogance, they start to think that it's about them and they're a great leader. It's dangerous, dangerous
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah. And I survived a lot of it getting my eyes back on Jesus and and off of me. Um and I think for some of the people watching this, if they've been through church hurt, I would recommend reading this book, God Called Love.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
reminder is so great. This is who we serve. This is what
yeah,
it's all about. Uh, I would recommend taking that time to get your focus back on Jesus and off of yourself, off of what happened.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
It's not easy though. In one of the last chapters of the book, I talk about the closing of John's gospel. And
Mm,
there's this really powerful moment where Jesus is on the, you'll be familiar, most of your listeners will be familiar with it, where Jesus is there on the shore and he calls out to the disciples who've been led out there by Peter to go fish. They've gone back to their old way of life.
yeah.
And he calls out to them and they hadn't caught anything. And anyway, so you know the story. And anyways, in that moment of restoration, Jesus ask Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" And when you look at the Greek of that, the Greek text, it's not like he's just saying, "Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me?" He's saying it differently, but it's subtly different because of the
The
Greek
Greek.
context. And yeah, and so he asking, "Do you love me? Do you agape love me? Will you die for me?" Basically, and Peter only can respond with that brotherly love, with phileo. And by the end of it, by the third time, Jesus asked him, "Do you phileo me?" He. I'm giving away the end of the book, but he
Yeah.
he asked me. He asked Peter using the same word as if to imply, "I'll meet you where you're at, and then from there, follow me." He commissions him
Ah,
again. And he says, "Feed my sheep." And in fact, like the Greek word that's used for sheep initially is lambs. And so he says several times, "Feed my sheep." And the first time, I talk about this in the book, but the first time
wow.
he says lambs, as if to imply, if you can do nothing else, at least take care of the little ones, take care of the ones who are
Yes.
starting out, the children, if you will.
Yes. Oh
Um,
my goodness.
and by the end of it, he's talking about the whole flock. And yeah,
Oh my
it's
goodness.
changes, I think, the way we think about that moment of interaction where it almost feels like Jesus is condemning, where he, even though John tells us he did not come to condemn, it feels like condemnation, but it's not. It's restoration. It's restructuring his faith so that he then goes on to be a founder in the early church and to change the world. I mean, really, like he's empowered and equipped. And you
Oh
read the
my
book of
goodness.
Acts and Peter's, front and center for the first
Yes.
half of it, and then it's Paul, and it's yeah. So
Oh my
yeah,
goodness. I love that. It's not condemnation, it's restoration.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And I haven't gotten that far yet. I didn't get to that part, and now I can't wait to get to that part.
Well, good.
Oh my goodness. Um, well, I am going to put the link down below here, not only for Michael Chanley's website, but a direct link for his book and the workbook. So you can click on that and go directly there and get your copy. Please do that. That would be a really great thing. You will not regret it. You
Yeah.
will be glad you got it. Um, I want to say a huge thank you to Michael Chanley for taking time out of his day to
Yeah.
share with us. And thank you for putting all this into the book and not just
Yeah.
leaving it on
Thanks.
your computer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a joy and a blessing. And if there's anyone out there, if your church is interested in going through this material or you're looking for content to preach, for churches that go through it, I've got a whole manuscript of the series.
Oh,
It laid out from all the way through the book of John
mm,
and a climax with Easter.
yeah,
And so we've made it a series that went through Easter, and I'd be happy to share that content with someone if they need manuscripts for preaching through this content or helping them work on that. I love doing that kind of stuff.
that's
Um
awesome. Thank you for
but
your humility and desire to serve the kingdom.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
no, that's what it's about. So honored to do it, and this has been the best season of ministry I've ever had. Is serving in a local church and helping to lead people to Jesus, and seeing the local church restored that was failing has been the
Mm.
joy. I mean, it's just been the best thing, and it's so good. I can't say enough good things about this place. If you're ever near Louisville, Kentucky, stop in and see us. I'd be happy to tell you the story about what God's doing here.
What's the name of the church?
Tunnel Hill Christian Church.
Yeah, you might
Yeah,
end up with a few that drop by.
that would be such a blessing. We put our sermons on YouTube. It's not flashy, it's simple, but it's so good. And there's been so many people who've told me they come here and they feel like it's a restoration of their faith
Mm.
because it's simple. And
Yeah.
this place has been here 170 years, and
Whoa.
so we're just continuing a tradition of helping people to follow Jesus and
Oh
getting
my
better at
goodness.
it.
That is so fantastic. Oh my goodness. This has been so good, and I really appreciate everything you've been sharing.
Yeah,
Again,
thanks.
if you want to ask him for, uh, see if he has availability to come teach, I'm going to put his Facebook link down below. You can click on that, do some Facebook stalking, see what you can find. And
Oh goodness.
yeah. And I always tell them, thank you guys for everything you do for Jesus and his kids. God sees it. And I hope this has encouraged you guys to keep doing what you do so well.
Yeah.
Um, I hope to see you all next week on the Kidmin.Ninja, and we will see you then. Bye bye.
Bye.